Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very exciting video and it is one that I have watched every single year without fail and that I've always wanted to do, and that is an end of year book tag. To be known as to be loved. I wish I could erase it from my memory, but I just could not get through Goblet of Fire. It had me on the edge of my seat. You would think if you DNF a book in a series, you just stop there. I devoured this book. I have curated a list of questions from a variety of previous tags that I've watched, mainly from Bestie, Rach and Sarah. I will put them on the screen here and link them below as well. I took out a few questions that didn't feel as applicable to what I've read this year and have included, how many questions have I included? I think just under 20, somewhere between 15 to 20, and we're just going to talk about the books that we've read in 2025. First question is the most disappointing book of 2025, which is a little bit of a bummer to start out on, and I actually don't own the physical book because I think I must have donated it somewhere because I just really did not love it, and that is unfortunately Fearless by Lauren Roberts. I read Powerless maybe 2024? I don't know when it came out. Anyway, I read Powerless quite a while ago and I really loved it as a first book, and then I fear that since then we've just been going downhill, and Reckless was not as good as Powerless, and then Fearless was just, I don't even know what to describe it as. I think I gave it a generous 2-star, which I'm not a 2-star. I'm quite generous with my 3 stars when I didn't love a book, but it was fine. I had a good time. I passionately gave this one a 2-star because it was, unfortunately for me, felt very copy paste from the first 2 books into the third, and like we just jammed a whole bunch of information that we've already read before and experienced before just so we could get a third book. It was quite repetitive, felt very unnecessary, and just did not love it. And I think that's a kind of consensus among readers of this book, is that it just was a little disappointing. Next up, we have a book that was overhyped. Now, I have tried my best to read this series. I've seen it all over Instagram and TikTok, and the covers are stunning and they're perfect seasonal vibes, and I want to be a seasonal reader, but I just think they're overhyped, and that is unfortunately the Pumpkin Spice Cafe series by Laurie Gilmore. I did finish this first one and felt it was overhyped. I think that the autumn vibes are perfect and it's so cute, but the writing, I just could not sit through it. There was just something about it that felt so cringe, and the rest of the series is also included later in the tag, so I'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, I just think this one is a little overhyped and I just don't get the hype. Next up, we have our favorite book couple. Now, I've got 2 top contenders, so I wanted to include them both because I love them for different reasons. First up, I would say that this one goes slightly ahead of the next one because I think this is maybe my favorite romance of 2025. It's a big call, but that is Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This one honestly really surprised me. I had relatively low expectations going into this book. It is a surprise pregnancy or unexpected pregnancy trope, which typically does not get a whole lot of love. That's one trope that a lot of people do not like. However, I loved it. And so I don't know if she just did it really well or if that trope just doesn't bother me that much. I quite like kids, and so the thought of someone being pregnant or having kids doesn't really bother me as far as a book trope goes. I loved this book so much. It could have just been right book, right time. That's a possibility. But there was something so wholesome about it. You can't read this and not just feel good. It's just such a feel-good romance. I guess the best way I can describe how I felt about it is it felt like classic rom-coms. That vibe of How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, that classic, not cheesy, not cringy, wholesome, quality romance. That's how I felt about this book. If you don't know the plot of this one, it is set in New York City, which I loved and was done really well. And it's a surprise pregnancy, brother's best friend situation. Yeah, brother's best friend. No, best friend's brother. Yeah, best friend's brother. So we have Eve, our female main character, and then her best friend, that brother, Shep, is the main character, male main character. But I think what was so good about this book, oh, is that a spoiler? I don't think it's a spoiler. Does it say it on the back? Okay, it says it on the back, so it's not a spoiler. But Shep's not the father, and so we end up in this kind of weird love triangle situation, which is another trope that people normally just shy away from, but I think it was done so well. I think that normally in a love triangle, you have a clear person you're rooting for, and so the other person's just kind of pissing you off. You're like, please leave. No one wants you here. We just want these 2 people together. However, with Ready or Not, yes, there's one you're leaning towards, but the other guy, you still really like him and you're still rooting for him. You might not be rooting for him with her. However, he's such a nice guy. He's also the father. And so part of you is like, wait, that's a family. Maybe I do want them to be together. But wait, this connection, this childhood romance, this friends to lovers situation is also amazing. And so you end up rooting for both. And I think that's what I really loved about it, because it just was a breath of fresh air to two tropes that often get a lot of hate. And so I think no matter if you don't like those two tropes, I think you should still really try this book. Another thing I loved about this book is if you love the saying or love the feeling is that of to be known is to be loved, this book has that in spades. Like the way that Shep knows Eve and treats her and allows her to be herself and just knows her so well, even though she's just trying to do, I don't know, she's going through a lot. She's pregnant, let's be real. And he just shows up for her and I don't know, definitely to be known is to be loved, if I could sum this up in one phrase or sentence. Our second favorite book couple, but super, super, super close contender, is Alice and Charlie from One Golden Summer. I devoured this book. When I tell you that I read this so quick, it just had everything that I want in a summer romance, and it was fun, it was fast paced, it had emotions, it had family dynamics that were complicated, it had the perfect summer setting on a lake, it had a witty, banterous, goofball, kind of cocky, but in this weirdly sincere way, male main character and a female main character who's trying to figure out her life. This book. The reason that Charlie and Alice, one of my favorite couples, is because they both brought out the best in each other. Both of them had these facades, very different facades, and surface level, I guess, personalities that they show everyone, right? Charlie is this happy-go-lucky, kind of cocky, showboaty guy on the outside. And on the outside, Alice is strong, determined, does not need help from anyone. And those are the personas that they show the world, right? However, on the inside, Charlie is actually this sincere, kind of damaged, kind of soft and caring soul. And Alice is also, she cares about herself. She wants love. She loves her family and she does need help and she doesn't have it all together. And so those are sort of under the surface. And I think the reason I love them is because they both so beautifully helped the other person be themselves, not just only around each other, but to the people all around them. And I just thought that that was really well done in this book. And that's why they're one of my favorite couples of 2025. Next up, we have our favorite main character. Now, technically we have 3 for this prompt. I've read a lot of books, sue me. Our first and definitely top favorite main character of 2025 is none other than Hamish Abernathy. I don't even have words to articulate how much I love this book, but I will try. I read this book in November. I did a full Hunger Games reread, then read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and then went into Sunrise on the Reaping. And the chokehold that this book has on me is insane. And it's gonna come up in later tags because it was my favorite book of the year. So I will wait to talk a little bit more about the book in general till then. But as far as main character goes, Hamish is just so, oh my God, he just has so many layers and he is written as a character so well. The amount of information that you get about him in this book that sheds light on the entire Hunger Games series and everything that he is and what he stands for and how he acts, and seeing all of his trauma that he has gone through. And even in this book is still trying to do the best thing for everyone and care for I don't even really have the words, but if you've read this book, I think you'd feel the same way. And this is a public service announcement that if you read the Hunger Games as a kid, yet you haven't read the prequels yet, please do a full Hunger Games reread and then go into them. You will not regret it. It was insane reading them as an adult and going into this book with the lens of an adult. I'm so glad that this didn't come out when I was 12 and I read it then, because the complexities of Hamish I would have gone over my head. But being able to read this as an adult with life perspective and an understanding of the Hunger Games as a series, if I talk about him too much, I might start crying. But hands down, the award for favorite main character is Hamish Abernathy. A very close second is the 2 main characters of Fredrik Backman's My Friends, and that is Louisa and Ted. Their dynamic, just everything about them. So firstly, the way that Fredrik Backman writes characters always astounds me and shocks me at how, I don't know why I'm surprised at this point, but they are just always so layered and complex and well written and damaged, but have hope and promise, and I don't know. They just always hit so hard. But what I really loved about these 2 main characters was their dynamic, because they were such an uncanny, really odd duo of main characters to have together, but their dynamic was impeccable. So if you haven't read My Friends, essentially the setup is that there are 4 friends who, when they were kids in their hometown, would hang out in the summer, and they went through a lot of stuff together. Long story short, one of them becomes an artist, and there's this famous painting, and many, many moons later, Louisa, who has also gone through a lot of things in her life, holds this painting very dear to her heart. She then meets the artist, who unfortunately passes away, but then that artist, when he's on his deathbed, asks Ted, one of the people he grew up with, please find Louisa, give her the painting, that's my final wish. And Ted's like, well, damn, now I have to find this 18-year-old girl. So Ted's like 50, I'm assuming. I can't remember how old he is, but he's like a 50-year-old man. Louisa's a freshly 18-year-old girl with so much spunk and spice and attitude. And he's like, well, now I have to track down this 18-year-old and give her this very, very, very expensive painting from my best friend who just died. That's the setup, essentially. And they were just 2 characters that was so well written. And in my head, they are real people. There is no way that Ted and Louisa are not real people. And the journey that they go on with grief and, they just both have been through so much. Even though Louisa's 18, she has been through a lot in her life. She has no family. She's been through foster care. She has lost her best friend and is grieving that. So they've both lost their best friends, even though they're at different stages in life and they've sort of gone down different paths. They have a lot in common. And I think what I really loved is that this book shows you that you can really have a connection with anyone, no matter what age, gender, anything. Everyone has experienced very similar things. It's just such a well-written book, and I love these characters so much. And in my brain, they are real people. And if I sat here for long enough and considered the fact that they are not, I might lose my mind. Next up, we have a book that surprised me. And for this one, I think I'm gonna go with The Favorites by Lane Fargo. When this came out and everyone was reading it, I don't know when that was, like a while before I read it. This has been on my TBR for a very long time. And there was just lots of controversial opinions. I essentially just saw a lot that it was like Magnolia Parks, that it was very toxic, very dramatic, and it's conflicting because you don't want to like the characters, but you kind of love the book. So I don't know, I just didn't have high hopes. I thought it would be dramatic and there was a chance that I would find it too toxic, because I love Magnolia Parks, but definitely it's a little toxic. But I loved this book. I devoured it. And yes, it was toxic, but it was just done in this way that you're kind of rooting for the characters, and there were certain points where it went a little too far for me personally, but it didn't make me love the book any less. It just reminded me that that was their story and I didn't have to love their choices and their decisions. I did not support like 80% of what they did in this book. As a book, I loved it. That was what I was worried about, is that people felt like they couldn't separate not liking what they did and not liking the book. But it really surprised me that I was able to do that. I don't like anything that Katerina and Heath and anyone in this book really did majority of the time, but I still loved the book. And that really surprised me. Next, we have a new favorite author, which was a little tricky to pick because, to be honest, this year I did a lot of rereads, or a lot of reading of books of authors I'd already read before. Even though I would have loved to have read some new books, I didn't have that many to choose from. So I think I'm gonna go with Cara Bastone. I already talked everyone's ear off about Ready or Not. However, I also read Promise Me Sunshine, which was her newer release that came out this year. And I also really loved it. I didn't love it as much as Ready or Not, but I thought it was a beautiful book. It was very raw and vulnerable and about grief, and I loved the characters. I loved the male main character. It's similar to this one. It is a very to be known as to be loved kind of romance, and I love that about Cara Bastone's writing. I think her writing is refreshing and funny and whimsical, but also talking about topics that are so serious and kind of heartbreaking. And she talks a lot about grief and family dynamics, and she just does it in a way that you're laughing one second and crying the next. And I absolutely loved that. I'm also very lucky to have an early copy of her next book, No Matter What, on my NetGalley at the moment. And that is on my priority TBR for early next year, because I'm so excited to see what else she's got in store for us. Next up, we have Happiest book of the year, which, considering I read books like The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, Frederick Backman, it was weirdly very difficult to find Happiest book of the year. But I think hands down it is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I just vividly remember feeling so giddy reading this book. I think that, I don't know, just there was so many lines that I kept underlining and laughing and smiling while reading, and it was such a feel-good romance that I think it's definitely the happiest I've felt reading a book this year. There's definitely a few rom-coms I've read that are happy books, but just personally, the happiest I felt while reading a book was First Time Caller. Next up, we have most frustrating book of the year. Now, as I just said, I read Harry Potter this year. It is the first time that I've read Harry Potter. I never read it as a kid, and my boyfriend was rereading it. So I thought, what better time for me to read it so I can have 7 buddy reads with him. He reads non-fiction history war books, and there was just never going to be a time that we could read books at the same time together. So I decided to do a full-on deep dive into the Harry Potter universe, and there are a few books on this tag from the Harry Potter series, but unfortunately the most frustrating book of the year was Goblet of Fire. I struggled with this book so much. I really did enjoy my Harry Potter reading experience. I think the world is amazing, but something about Goblet of Fire just did not do it for me. I don't know what it was, but I binged the first 3 books because they're so short. And then book 4 took me a month to read, I think. And then book 5, 6, 7, I binged. So there was just something about it that didn't do it for me. I know it's some people's favorite book in the series, but I don't know. And I think what made it so frustrating is that I really wanted to continue the series. I wanted to keep reading. I do really love the world, and I knew that book 5, 6, and 7 was gonna have so much information and questions answered that I had, but I just could not get through Goblet of Fire. I don't think this is gonna surprise absolutely anyone, but best adaptation of the year, hands down, fear this is kind of obvious, has to go to The Summer I Turned Pretty book 3 into season 3. I feel like it's a time in my life I'm so grateful for, and I'm so sad that I'll never get to live again. But watching every Wednesday night episode drop, watching it with my friends is just something that I'm so grateful for. So the experience as a whole, 10 out of 10, like everyone talking about it, everyone watching it, everyone every week tuning in, the music, the soundtracks, like everything, the whole experience was amazing. But the actual adaptation, better than the book. Which, to be honest, I don't say that lightly. I'm a big book over movie or TV show person. That's just what they've done with this TV show has turned a book series that is 10, 15 years old and brought so much life into it, and the acting and honestly, I think that the reason that it is amazing is because the plot line is kind of jarring, having a love triangle with brothers and so much back and forth and flip-floppiness that reading it can get a little frustrating, but watching it, having actors that are so well suited to each role and that are so talented in their breakout roles, essentially. Having a soundtrack that is full of Taylor Swift and Gracie Abrams and Ariana Grande and Billie Eilish and just amazing songs. Insane. Having a fandom that has grown so everyone gets to talk about it, and the vibes of Cousins Beach, getting to see that visually on screen. I just think they did an amazing job, and I loved season 1 and season 2 when I watched them, but they were a little cringe, and I just think that season 3 is a lot more adult, they're a lot more grown up, and they just did such a good job with it. I think it speaks for itself as favorite adaptation of 2025. The next question in the tag, well, 2 that kind of go together, is longest book and shortest book that I read this year, and these, funnily enough, are both in the Harry Potter series. So we've got the shortest book being Philosopher's Stone and the longest book being Order of the Phoenix. I read both of them in the same amount of time, which is kind of psychotic. I think it took me 2 days to finish Philosopher's Stone. I still binged it. Probably took me 2 different sittings over 2 different days, just sort of picking it up. And then Order of the Phoenix, I loved so much, I binged again in 2 days over a few sittings. So kind of funny that I finished them in the same amount of time, but that's the longest and shortest book that I've read this year. And I did love them both, to be honest. Order of the Phoenix is up there for my favorite Harry Potter books. It's not my, is it? I think it could be my favorite Harry Potter book. I'm not really sure. They kind of all blur into one at some point. So I'm not really sure of my exact ranking, but it definitely was the longest. My favorite book cover is actually my most recent read, and that is Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. I only gave this a 3.5 star. I think it is fun and whimsical. It was just a little too spicy for my liking, but the cover itself, I just think is so stunning. Next up, we have a book I haven't stopped thinking about. And I don't think it surprises anyone that that is Sunrise on the Reaping. I know I already ranted about this book, so I will try not to go on about it too much longer, but the events from this book are just so stuck in my brain. I have not been able to stop thinking about it. I've read a few books since, doesn't matter. I cannot wait for the movie. The fact that we're gonna get it on screen is insane, and the trailer looks so good, and I just cannot erase this from my memory. I wish I could. I wish I could erase it from my memory and read it for the first time again, but it is just ingrained in my memory and I have not moved on. Next we have the cringiest books I read this year, which follows up from an earlier book which was overhyped, which is the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, but that is just this entire series really. I finished the first one earlier in the year in autumn and really just cringed the whole way through. I then attempted to read the next one, which is the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, and I think I DNF'd it around 20% in because I just could not get over the cringe factor. And that's book 2. And then you would think if you DNF a book in a series, you just stop there. But no, I decided to try again with The Christmas Tree Farm because I wanted to read it around Christmas. I thought maybe if it's Christmassy, that'll get me through the book. Just couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. DNF'd it as well. I just don't get the hype with these. I think I'm gonna donate these to like a little library or something. If you love them, I'm sorry. They're just not for me. I find them quite cringe. I think it's the writing style because the premise sounds great. It's very Gilmore Girls-esque, but they're just not for me. Next up, we have an unpopular book that I loved. I don't know if this is necessarily an unpopular book. However, I would say that out of all of these authors' books, it is the one that people say they like the least. And I actually kind of enjoyed it, and that's Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I think I just read it at the perfect time. I had just read The Love Hypothesis and I loved it. And so when I read this and people just say it's nowhere near as good, it's very cringe, I kind of loved it. There was only one part of the book that I didn't love towards the end, but I loved it, A, so much more than I thought I would, but B, a lot more than what I see people online talking about it. So for that, I would say it is an unpopular book that I loved. I have a very interesting Ali Hazelwood journey. I think the first book I read of hers was Check and Mate, and then I read Not in Love, and then I read Deep End. So I read all of her new releases without reading any of her backlist, and I just didn't have her as a favorite author. I didn't love those new releases as much. I liked Deep End, but I didn't like Check and Mate and I didn't like Not in Love. So then I just kept putting off reading her backlist. But then I read The Love Hypothesis and I was addicted, and then I read it in like 24 hours. Did the same with this one. So I think it was just right book, right time. But I honestly really like this one. I think I gave it a 4 or a 4.5. I think this was a 4 and Love Hypothesis was a 4.5 from memory. But yeah, I really liked this one. For a book with the most unique concept, I think it has to go to The Unmaking of June Farrow. I have never read anything like this ever before. It is magical realism, cross mystery, cross romance. And it was so refreshing and it was so different and I just absolutely loved it. This is another one that really took me by surprise. And I don't even know how to describe the concept. I feel like the best way for me to describe this concept to you is to read the synopsis because I really just have no idea how to even articulate what this book is because it's so unique. In the small mountain town of Jasper, North Carolina, June Farrow is waiting for fate to find her. The Farrow women are known for their thriving flower farm and for the mysterious curse that has plagued their family line. The whole town remembers the madness that led to Susanna Farrow's disappearance, leaving her daughter June to be raised by her grandmother and haunted by rumors. It's been a year since June started seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Faint wind chimes, a voice calling her name, a mysterious door appearing out of nowhere, signs of what June has always known is coming. But June is determined to end the curse once and for all. And even if she must sacrifice the hope of love and family of her own. After her grandmother's death, June discovers a series of cryptic clues regarding her mother's disappearance, except these only lead to more questions. But could the door she once assumed was a hallucination be the answer she's been searching for? The next time it appears, June realizes that she can touch it and walk through the threshold, and when she does, she embarks on a journey that will not only change both the past and the future, but also uncover the lingering mysteries of her small town and entangle her heart in an epic star-crossed love. If you like mysteries, but you feel like you can always guess what's going to happen, you can always predict the ending, I would highly recommend this book. Because of the magical element, there are just parts of this book that you cannot guess because it's to do with the world system and the magic system that you do not know yet. Our final book of our 2025 book tag is a book I would reread. There's quite a few books that I did read this year that were rereads, and so we didn't have that many to choose from. But if you've gotten to this point in the video, I don't think this answer is going to surprise you. I tried to keep my top book of the year. I could have picked it in so many, and I only put it in 3, but again, Sunrise on the Reaping. Now, obviously it's a favorite book, so I'd love to reread it, But the reason I specifically want to reread it next year is because in November, the Sunrise on the Reaping movie comes out. And so I'd love to do a full reread a bit closer to the time, maybe a couple months before, so that it's all fresh in my mind before going into the movie. I also think this is a book that is a perfect reread because there is likely so many parts of this book that I did not pick up on because of how many complex nuances and traumas and different character stories there are in this book. So I think that an in-depth reread would really allow you to fully understand that and pick up on. I feel like it's one of those books that every time you read it, you probably pick up new things about the book and the story and the characters that you didn't notice before. This would definitely be the book that I would want to and am going to reread in 2026. Those are all of the questions that I have for the 2025 end of year book tag. I absolutely love doing this. I considered doing just a top 10 books of the year and talking about why I loved them, but I thought this was a really interesting way to sort of summarize my reading year as a whole. And so I really enjoyed picking all the books and talking about them. I would absolutely love to know your favorite books of the year. So if you put them in the comments, maybe I'll add them to my 2026 TBR. I hope you had a wonderful reading year and that 2026 brings you some new favorite books. I have so many exciting reading vlogs planned and New Year content that I'm so excited to film. I have moved into a new apartment and it's just bringing me so much inspiration to film so many different videos. So stay tuned and I will see you in the new year.